Okay, now that we've discussed the schematic symbols and their corresponding more real-world view animated symbols, the next step is going to be to run this animation in real time for 2 cycles so you can see all the components moving as they would in real time. And then what we're going to do is slow it down and take it frame by frame, and we can advance the frames or we can rewind them so we can get a better idea of exactly what these components are doing. So here we go. We'll run a couple of cycles in real time. There it extends, retracts, extends, and retracts, and hopefully you can get an appreciation of the different colors, how they depict the different pressures. The red indicates the higher pressure and the blue indicates the tank pressure. There's varying colors in between, like purple, that represent the more intermediate pressures. So that was a couple of cycles in real time. So now we'll take it frame by frame, and as you can see here, when we start off, the spool is in the neutral position. Flow from the pump is blocked. These lands right here can't go anywhere, so its only path is over the relief valve. And you can see the relief valve poppet is unseated, allowing this flow to flow through the valve into the tank. So the pressure here has exceeded the rating of the spring, allowing it to go to tank. So now we'll advance it a frame, and you can see at this point not much has changed. Our spool is still in the neutral position. Relief valve is still open up to tank. Now in this frame, this is where things start to happen. Our spool here has shifted to the left, which schematically would correlate with this solenoid being energized. Shifting this way, P port goes to A, B port goes to T. So let's see how that correlates here. Here's your P port. The spool has shifted. It's come off this land here, and now you're going to get this port, this flow from the pump here can go over this spool. There will be a pressure drop over the spool, but it's going to the A port here. And at the same time it goes to the A port, it's going to flow out into the piston end of the cylinder. You're going to start to see pressure build here. See how this gauge is showing high pressure. This gauge is still showing a low pressure. And the other thing to point out at this point, your counterbalance valve is getting its pilot. Okay, so all that's starting to happen now. So we'll advance in another frame, and you can see at this point flows started to happen. Things aren't moving quite yet, but pressures build up. The pilot here is beginning to shift the counterbalance valve. The relief valve, notice, has closed back off, so no longer, the system no longer has to build that much pressure anymore because it's starting to get a flow path here. So now our relief valve is closed to tank as flow goes off and starts to accumulate in the piston end of the cylinder. So as I advance in another frame, things start to move, and the big thing I want to point out here is that the counterbalance valve is now open. In other words, this pilot signal here has moved this off of its land, and now you get flow from port 1 of the counterbalance valve up to port 2 of the counterbalance valve, where that was blocked off before. So back to our schematic, what does that mean? Now that you have a pilot, imagine this arrow shifting over to allow connectivity between port 1 and port 2, and now oil can flow right out of the rod end and through this valve. And when that happens, you'll have a little bit higher pressure here because there's a pressure drop across this valve, and then once the flow comes to our directional valve, now it's got a wide open path to tank. Okay? So that's where we are with this frame.